I feel very sorry for a lot of women, and I feel very sorry for a lot of men who have sold their youth and sold their chastity, sold their dignity to be so cheap. In the past, Arab girls here in this country, in Australia, in Sydney and in Melbourne, an Arab girl, only 10 years ago, was the most, I'm going to use lame terms because this is what they say, she was the hardest to get, okay? She was the most difficult to get to. And all those other boys, they knew that. My wife tells me when she was back at school, the Arab girl, she was untouchable. And the Muslim men, they used to always protect them. So they had ghira on their sisters in Islam. Wallahi, it is a great sorrow. Only now, 6 years ago, I've been going to Sydney back and forth and in Melbourne, and these are the stories I'm hearing. Our girls are out there throwing themselves at the men, throwing themselves. And now the men are pushing them away. From where Allah put us, put our sisters to where they become like trash, cheap, because she wants some attention. And I say, subhanallah, to these men who pick on women who don't put their hijab, and they say, oh, it's her fault, it's her fault. You come to a man and say, well, it's her fault. This is some culture we have, where boys are allowed to go out with the girl, do whatever he wants, because it's the girl's fault. Did you not know that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the man first? In relation to this type of relation, He says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ مُؤْمِنِينَ, male, masculine term. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believing men to cover their gaze, to guard part of their gaze, meaning not to use their gaze too much. Then He says, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنْ. And then say also to the women, believing women, to guard part of their gaze. وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنْ. And to guard their chastity. وَلَا يُدْنِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا لِبُعُولَتِهِنْ. And not to reveal their adornments and their beauty except to their husbands, or to those whom they cannot marry, like her father, her brother, and other women. That's okay, in order to protect her own chastity. But Allah addresses the man first. So hijab actually applies to the man before the woman. Because hijab is not about a scarf on the head, habibi. Hijab doesn't mean scarf. A lot of people who say hijab, oh, I'm going to wear the scarf soon. Scarf is not hijab, habibi. Scarf is just covering the hair, not revealing the body and covering the hair. You see them walking out with tight clothing, mashallah, and then she's got a little scarf on her head, mashallah. It calls it hijab. This is not hijab. Hijab is protection and veil. And for the man there is a protection and veil. The veil is their behavior. And the man also has a modest dress code as well. But hijab not only is in clothing but also in behavior. In fact, there is a greater emphasis on hijab in the behavior and attitude than there is on clothing in the Quran and in the Sunnah, ya ikhwan. So much about talking about the voice, about the socializing, how far you can go, about the manner that you walk, the way that you seclude yourself, the way you gaze at people, the way you present yourself. All of this is part of hijab, and clothing is only one little portion of it all. So my dear brothers and sisters, don't fool yourselves. Hijab to both areas. And that way you will guard yourself, guard your mothers, guard your sisters, guard your daughters, guard your wives, and guard yourselves. I know of some sisters who got fooled by the shaitan. They saw their brothers going out and doing what they want to do, and then what happens to the girl? As she grew up with her foolish, weak brain, and obviously with parents who don't know how to raise their children, she began to want to do what her brothers do. So she began to meet some girls who were corrupt, and she'd wait for the night, her parents would think she's asleep and go out of her window with her friends, until finally she was raped. And this is one incident out of many. But the other incidents are, because you see, she goes out, someone spikes her drink, and what happens to her? And some of them, they are convinced that this is what they should do. These girls think that this is what they should do. Allahu Akbar. They become slaves to society. Slaves. And they call hijab slavery? This is an independent woman who doesn't want all of that. She has guarded herself from all of this. Whereas the other ones, boys and girls, they have made themselves slaves to their lust, temptations, and the society. So I challenge you to get married and become a man. I challenge you.